The next section is transient stability plots. We've talked about these, and now we're going to get in and really talk about the details of how we can design plots and all the flexibility that's here. So we use a third-party tool that for the plotting. We've exposed the options that we think are most useful to the users, and then there's a whole lot of other options that are kind of behind the scenes if you really want to get into it. So my biggest recommendation with the plotting is to play with it, and don't be afraid to play with it as far as setting things up. You'll find as we go through these examples, you can easily drag and drop and move things around, and don't be afraid to just experiment with it to see what you get. So the main parts, there's all kinds of parts and names to the plot, so we'll go through some of that. The plot designer is the heart of all of this, that lets you define the objects that you're going to plot and the fields that you're going to plot, and then there are plots and subplots and title blocks and charts and data series and all these other things that go into a plot, and we'll talk about the different things that you can set with each of those. The plot designer gives you access to all of these things, and it adds, with anything in Simulator, you can save all this to an aux file. So once you've gone through all this trouble, then save it so you can reuse it. Let's just go into Simulator and look at some of this through an example. That's probably the easiest way to do this. So the case that we're going to do, because we're going to add some plots here. So let's just open up the TS9 bus fault no plot case. So again, that's in your transient stability folder, TS9 bus fault no plot. Open that up and don't save anything. And we'll go into the transient stability dialog, and then under plots and then plot designer, we can see all of these parts of the plot. So the first thing you want to choose is what we call a plot series. So a plot series is basically a data series. So you pick the object and the fields, or an object or multiple objects, and the fields that you want to add to a plot. So say you want to add a generator and you want to see the rotor angle and maybe see that for bus 1. If you select rotor angle and then bus 1, there's an add button here in the middle. If you click add, you'll see that it's created then a plot. It gives it a default name based on the generator, or the type of object that you're adding and the fields that you're adding. If you added one generator and decided, I want to put another generator on that same plot, if you select the plot name and then go and select another generator, still leave your field at rotor angle and select the generator 2 and click add, you can see that gets added to that same plot. If you decide, well, I don't like that there, maybe I don't want it there, you can delete it. So if you select a plot series, so that's a plot series is an object in a field, basically within a plot. There are buttons down here at the bottom. If you want to delete that, you can click this delete plot series, and then now my generator 2 rotor angle field went away. And then maybe you wanted to add generator 3 instead, you can select that and hit add. Now the thing you noticed, I forgot to select my plot, so when I hit add, that actually got added to a second plot. And maybe I decide, well, I don't want that on its own plot, I want it on the first plot, I can just left click on rotor angle GenBus 3 and I should be able to just drag it and drop it back up here on this other plot. And so now my second plot's empty. If I want to delete that entire plot because it's empty, if I select the plot, then my delete button now says delete plot. So as you select different things within the plot subplot axis group section, you'll see that the buttons change at the bottom. You'll see that over here on the right hand side there's a section over here on the right hand side that has a series of tabs, and you'll see that the tabs that are available might change a little bit as you select things, but each of these tabs is relevant for the different types of things you select here in the middle. So you also have options of you can select, should be able to select multiple fields. So say you want a generator, and if I want the rotor angle and the rotor angle no shift, if you hold down the control key, you can select multiple fields in the field chooser and unselect those. If you have multiple fields selected, you'll notice another option here to the right. Instead of just having the add button enabled, the add by field button is enabled. So that lets you group things by field instead. So you could create multiple plots based on field. So if before I do that, before I hit the add button, I want to make sure that I have the add new plots here selected. Otherwise, I'm adding into an existing plot. So you just need to make sure. This is one thing to be aware of, what you have selected before you hit the add. So select the add new plots here. If I select the add by field, now I have, instead of everything going to, let's see, I guess it doesn't. It actually doesn't create two new plots. It creates a different axis group. So it's adding things, because these two fields are on different scales, we have different axis groups to represent different scales. I guess you could put them all on the same axis group if you wanted. You can pick that up and drag it, but then you'll see a plot that doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why we have these axis groups. If in addition to selecting multiple fields, you've selected multiple objects, so you can do the same thing with the list of objects. You can hold the control key down and select different objects. You'll see the add by object field or button gets enabled. And again, if I make sure I click the add new plots here and use the add by object, now I get axis groups based on the objects rather than the fields. So I'll get an axis group per generator, and again, that probably doesn't make much sense in this case because of the different scales. Again, experiment. So if you play around with this, and then again, if you don't want something where it is, but you still want it somewhere in a plot, you can just drag it, left drag it and drop it, and then it's somewhere else. And once you have the data stored to go in the plots, you can keep changing them and generating them and closing them and redoing them until you get what you want. It's only ahead of time before you do a run that you either want to make sure your plots are defined that you're going to use, or you make sure that anything that you possibly want to plot you are storing with the results to store option. So if we look at some of the options that are available when we're setting up a plot, the general options here, so if you select a plot and click on this plot tab over here on the right hand section, this dictates when the plot's going to show up. So the default is they might show up at the completion of the run. So with these small cases, you can probably show them as the run is going on, and it won't cause a speed hit. On larger cases, unless you're doing debugging, you're curious what's going on, you probably just want to wait till the completion of the run to show the plots. Otherwise, you might slow your run down. But if that you can show your plots on execution of the run, so you can see your plot progress as your run progresses. And then if you don't do completion or on execution, manually show plots just means you have to come up here and hit this generate selected plot button in order for the plots to show up. If you have multiple plots, subplots on a given plot, we don't have any of these right now. We have just axis groups. But if I were to add a subplot to a plot, then we get this option of tile subplots mode. So what order you can have things show up in. So I can do this now without any data, which Gordon mentioned. If you don't, this is what you'll get. You'll just get empty plots if you have no data, but you can see the relative layout of the plots without the data. There's options here also to automatically save an image file of the plot. So you can do that if you want. So if you need those for, storing and documenting, or if you need to write a report or something, you can always save the image files. You could create those after the fact as well, but some people like to save those as the run progresses. So you can store one for each contingency, but if you're running multiple contingencies, you can store the plots for all contingencies. You can have one big plot, or you can just store each contingency in its own plot. And then you can change the plot names if you want. Defaults, again, go to the type of object and the fields that you're storing. But if you don't like those names, you can always rename things. Within the plot, there's a title block. So the title block is this thing at the bottom. By default, you'll see the Power World logo in here. You can put your own logo in there if you want. You can also put, there's a left memo and a right memo. So if you want to, name this something, give it some distinct comments, that's what you can do in the memo. There's also special key fields that you can put in here. I know like case name is one of them, and these special key fields start with the @ symbol. So if you do something like that, then it throws in the case name in the memo. There's a handful of these special key fields that you can put in. I think you can put date, time, case name, contingency name. You can even put in the events if you want. So all the events that occur during the run, so you can see all of the log. We've got these documented in the help topic on the plotting of the special ones that you can put in there. And then you can just change the, relative size of the title block, the height, the right width memo. Just, again, things to play with till it looks like what you want it to look like. If we look at if we click on one of the data series, you get more options up here. So there's the chart options. If you have subplots, this tells you how, again, the plots are laid out within a given plot. So if I go down to this plot that has multiple plots, or subplots in it, I should say, then you can see that the subplot number changes for the chart. You can choose whether or not the plots or subplots are visible. There's different titles and sizes and colors that you can specify for the the title and the footer. The horizontal axis, the default is always going to be the time, but that's not strictly required. So if you want to have your horizontal axis be something other than the time, you can specify an object. So you have to specify the object and then the field that you want to plot instead of the time. And again, this is an option that you specify on a like a subplot by subplot basis would be the horizontal axis. And then the vertical axis, that's determined by the axis group. So whether or not you're going to show the axis, what scale it is, where it's located, how it looks, color, size, visible, those are options that you can set for the vertical axis. You can change the scale on the vertical axis if you want. Again, if we go back to the horizontal axis, those options were there as well. And then finally, the plot series, you know, the lines that are going to be displayed, you can change how those look. You've got options of color, thickness, if it's a dashed line, a solid line. There's a style. So if you want it to be a line or a point, there's symbols. If you want to put symbols on here, you can choose how often to put a symbol on, however many points, and then you can change to different symbols for your plottings. Just to show some of these different things in a more a cleaner format here as far as what some of these names are. So for a complex plot, the whole thing that you see here is the plot. And then each of the individual images are the subplots. So you can put as many subplots as you want. Or maybe you can only do 4. I forget. I think you don't want to put that many. Probably 4 is the maximum, even if you can do more. So then within each subplot, you have either what you call them plot series or data series. So that's your actual data that you're plotting. And then axis groups, you can have multiple vertical axes on a single subplot. And then you can have, you know, different data series associated with each axis group.
We use a plot component, and then we kind of customize that component, so there's a lot of functionality here. A lot of functionality.
Yeah, we expose the things we think are the most common, which sometimes users don't think. I mean, there's things they want to change, so I'm trying to think here. Let's just open up the case that has a bunch of plots defined in it. So it's TS9 bus fault final plot. I think we've already looked at this earlier, but once you have that open, go ahead and hit Run Transient Stability. And so here we have a fairly substantial set of plots here, I guess. It's not just one thing going on. We have really everything that we've talked about here. So this top left subplot has 2 axis groups, and down here the bottom right-hand subplot is actually a plot where the horizontal axis is not time, but it looks to be frequency. So if we go into the plot designer, we can actually take a look at what we have here. So this is our one single plot. So you can see there's only one of the yellow folders here, but then there are 4 subplots within this single plot. And then subplot 1 has 2 axis groups, and then subplot 4 if we take a look at it and look at the horizontal axis, we can see that instead of showing time, we're showing the rotor angle of generator 2. So what we're plotting on that plot is the speed at generator 2 versus I guess it's rotor angle versus its speed. If you decide that you don't want all of those as subplots, again, you can take a subplot. I've made a new plot that has that single, instead of having a subplot in it, it has my, and that didn't drag the, it didn't take the horizontal axis with it. Okay, so I've got a bug there that we have to take a look at. I'm going to reopen my case. Okay. And I think, oh, actually, no, none of the data is stored in here, so I have to hit run before I get anything. So, I've closed my plots. If I want to, again, if I want to recreate them, I just have to select the plot that I want to create and hit the generate selected plots, and there they are again. You'll notice the legend under each plot. There's little check boxes here. If you uncheck any of those, you can eliminate that particular plot series. We do have a limit of when we stop showing the legend, and I think that's at 13.
Choose your enterable. Go back to the plot designer.
It used to be 13. Okay.
Yeah, we added that as an option.
Here, down at the bottom, this maximum plot series for which legend is shown. So if you decide you don't like the legend, you could probably put a 0 in there, and then your legend's gone.
Yeah, that's a newer option, and some people were saying, hey, can I control how many are shown? So we decided to add the value rather than have it fixed at 13.
And another fun thing you can do with the plots, if you select a plot, there's a button up above here that says Show Save Selected Plot Data. So you've got some options here that you can show this in a case information display or save it out to data files. These TS get results files are simulator created file, aux file formats. I'm not sure what the JSys file is myself, but I think it's...
That's for frequency analysis.
But if we click on the Show in Case Information Display option, you'll see all of the data that you've defined in that plot in a case information display. So this becomes a neat way to kind of filter the data that you want to see that's most important to you. So you don't have to manipulate the time values. You can just come in here and create a plot definition, and then you can get the data that you want. We'll talk about, there are some script actions that are available as far as getting data out of simulator, and you can use the plot definitions to do that, and that's what the second two options relate to. This TS get results are related to the script actions that you can do, but you can also do them here directly through this dialog without having to do the script command to do that. So
the case info one was something that I pushed Jamie to add a number of years ago, because I was wanting to group data somehow and then see it all together and be able to export it, like copy it into Excel. And we realized, we can group data by how we define it in plots, and then if we can just get access to the data, so we just added that button that says stick it in the case info display, you stick it in there, you've got access to all the data, you can put it in Excel, you can kind of do whatever you want with it. So it's a very convenient way to group data. And it was pretty simple to add too. So.
Let's see here. There's also options. If we go back to the result storage, store to RAM options page, if you'll notice there's some buttons here where you can, let's see, you can make a plot from the fields and the objects that you have selected. So if you select an entire column of a field, all the objects, you can make a plot and group it by the objects. So if you click that button, it made this new plot for me for generator rotor angle, and it made an axis group for each of the generators. And then if you select multiple fields and multiple objects, you'll have both options available where you can make a plot and group it by a field, or make a plot and group it by the object, or just make a plot, which in that case it throws all the fields and all the objects on one plot. So that's another convenient way to make the plots, assuming all the fields and everything are lined up the way you want them to go into your plots.
I will say it seems rather complicated, but that's because we've given you a lot of options, so you just figure out what you want to do, and chances are you can do it pretty simply. You know, it takes some playing around, but you just play around and run some cases and look at what you want to do. Then once you've got it set up the way you want it, you can save it in an aux file, and then it's available to you on any run you want.
There are some additional options that the slides aren't in this section, but we provide slides later on, and I'll just mention that here because we don't really talk about it. But like I said, we expose the things that we think are most useful to you. But if you generate one of these plots, you'll notice there's this little drop-down arrow at the bottom right-hand corner of a plot. If you click on that, there's this advanced chart options entry, and this is where you see all the possible things you can do to one of these charts. So, you know, if you don't like the borders, if you don't like the grid lines, you can come in here, you can change that. If you don't like the background color, if you want to, I think there's some gradients and things you can apply. There's all sorts of things you can do. We just mentioned that they're there if you're interested. In addition to making them available, these are options that we don't normally store. We don't store in an aux file. There's a separate format for that. So if you go through the effort of changing your chart options and you want to make sure you save those and be able to reuse those, there's the save and load options. There's also options here to print the chart, and then you can export the chart. So there's, if you want to save a chart in one of the various graphics formats, you can do that here as well. That's, you know, again, something separate than the option to automatically save the chart. So if you want to save them to a file and you forget to do that through the automatic options, you can always save them and export them.
Copy chart is something I use all the time, because if you want to toss it in a document, you just kind of do the copy chart and you can paste it into slide sets or a document. So. Let's
see. There's a few more things you can do here that are kind of, if you can hover over the data series, and if you hover in the right place, you'll see this pop-up come up that tells you what field you're at, what the value is, and some other statistical information. And this is useful for debugging. We'll talk about, I'm sure Jamie will talk about this when he goes through examples, but this is a good way when you're plotting a lot of data together to see the outliers. So you'll see some big squiggle come out on your plots, and you want to see what it is. So you can hover over it, and it should tell you exactly what it is you're looking at, and then you can look at that, in more detail. There's also a bus view option from here. So if you are hovering over a spot, if you right-click, you'll see, if you hover somewhere correctly and right-click the bus view, that'll open up the bus view of whatever object it is that's in your data series, and that again is useful for debugging or just information.
And I will say, don't be shy about abusing the plot. Like, we will commonly plot thousands of them on the same graph, and the reason why we do that is you get to see kind of the envelope of your performance, and if you have any outliers. And I told Jamie, we got to have that. We can't have a wimpy plot routine. It's got to be able to take lots of data sets and deal with it, and it does. So if you're like, well, I need to put 2,000 plots on here, it's like, well, just go ahead. It's okay. I mean, now don't show 2,000 legend entries, but, there's only so many colors. You're not going to, well, I guess with this hover, you can put thousands of them on there. You'll see a couple outliers, and then you can hover over them and figure out which ones are the strange ones, and that will help you track down where problems are. So we just had an example not too long ago where, who was that with the voltage collapse one, where the system was having a voltage collapse, but it was voltage collapsing in a local area. So unless you use some of these more advanced techniques, the idea of just looking at 16 main curves wasn't showing anything out of the ordinary, but there was a part of the system where it was voltage collapsing. So when we plotted all, whatever 1,000 number of voltages it was, we saw that because you saw everything kind of squiggling together. Then there were some that were falling off the edge. So don't be shy. They're meant to be used and abused.
Right. Yeah. Bottom line, really, with the plots is play with them, drag things around, add things, and so that's pretty much the structure information on the plot.